The Great War began in Europe. At first, the Central Powers, Germany, Austria, and Turkey, fought the Allies, England, France, and Russia. It was a struggle for power and land and money. No one believed it would last long, especially in the United States, where President Woodrow Wilson insisted the country not take sides. He remembered the Civil War from his own childhood. He knew how awful the effects of war could be.
The United States must be neutral, in fact as well as in name. There is such a thing as a man being too proud to fight.
But World War I was worse than anyone could have imagined. Armies of men dug themselves into trenches and slew men in other trenches. And new inventions, like the Wright brothers' airplanes, which were intended to do good, became instruments of death. At first, airplanes were used to scout enemy territory. Flyers leaned out of cockpits and shot their weapons at enemy pilots. Then a new invention allowed pilots to synchronize machine gun fire with propeller blades. Soon bombs were brought aboard and dropped by hand over the plane's side. But perhaps the most deadly weapon of all were German submarines. And on May 8, 1915, Americans were the target.
New York Times. The Cunard liner Lusitania sailed out of New York last Saturday with 1,918 souls aboard. She was sunk by a German submarine which sent 2 torpedoes crashing into her side.
As pressure to enter the war mounted, President Wilson refused until early in 1917, when Germany sank 8 more U.S. ships. On the night of March 31st, Woodrow Wilson got out of bed and took his portable typewriter to the south veranda of the White House. In the quiet of early morning, the president typed out a message that was to become famous.
The present German submarine warfare against commerce is a warfare against mankind. It is a war against all nations. We are accepting the challenge. The world must be made safe for democracy.
It was a presidential call for a declaration of war, and it made it clear that this was to be a war on behalf of freedom. On April 2nd, President Wilson spoke to Congress.
It is a fearful thing to lead this great peaceful people into war, into the most terrible and disastrous of all wars. But the right is more precious than peace, and we shall fight for things which we have always carried nearest our hearts, for democracy.
Wilson received the greatest ovation of his life. The congressmen cheered and cheered. The president went back to his office. He looked at his aide. "Isn't it strange that men should cheer for war?" he said. Then he put his head on his desk and wept.